Norden bombsight battlefield precision. The Norden bombsight occupies a peculiar place in the history of technology. It was arguably the most famous secret weapon of the Second World War prior to the Manhattan Project, and certainly the most expensive. By the time the war ended, the United States had spent more on its development and production than on the atomic bomb, roughly $1.5 billion in contemporary terms. Yet for all that investment, for all the security precautions that required armed guards to carry the device to the aircraft under canvas covers, the Norden's actual performance in combat fell, well, dramatically short of the legend. The popular narrative treats this as a simple story of overpromise and underdelivery. But, that framing misses something more fundamental. The Norden was never just a mechanical computer mounted in a B-17 nose. It was the physical embodiment of a moral argument, a belief that war could be made precise, that industrial targets could be surgically removed without the indiscriminate horror of area bombing. When the technology failed to deliver that precision, the men who believed in that argument had to confront a difficult question, whether to abandon the objective or abandon the method. The bombsight's origins had nothing to do with the Army Air Forces. Carl Norden was a Dutch engineer, a gyroscope specialist who never became an American citizen and did much of his critical design work at his mother's home in Switzerland, mailing his drawings back to the United States via diplomatic pouch. His original customer was not the Army, but the Navy's Bureau of Ordnance, which wanted a device that could hit moving ships from high altitude. The Navy funded his work for nearly 2 decades, through the Mark 11 and eventually the Mark 15, the instrument that would become known simply as the Norden sight. The Army only placed its first orders after watching a 1931 test against the hulk of the cruiser Pittsburgh, where the results proved impressive enough to warrant adoption for the emerging doctrine of strategic bombardment. By the time production ramped up, the Norden had become a system rather than a standalone sight. It integrated with the Sperry C-1 autopilot, which meant the bombardier could fly the aircraft through the bombsight itself, making constant micro-adjustments without relying on verbal instructions to a pilot fighting turbulence and flak. What the training manuals didn't account for was the environment of actual combat. The Norden functioned as an analog computer. The bombardier entered altitude, airspeed, wind direction, and ballistic data for the specific bomb type. The sight then calculated a trajectory and, when slaved to the autopilot, flew the bomber to the precise release point. Under ideal conditions at the test range over Muroc Dry Lake, crews could indeed put bombs within 50 feet of the aiming point. But ideal conditions meant a clear day with no cloud cover, no defensive fire forcing evasive action, no temperature extremes affecting the instrument's delicate mechanisms, and, most importantly, no bomber formation to maintain. In the winter of 1943, over Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the 8th Air Force discovered the gap between the test range and the target. During the October raid on the Schweinfurt ball-bearing plants, the Army Air Forces dispatched more than 250 B-17s. They lost 60 bombers and 600 airmen. Post-strike analysis revealed that only 1 of every 10 bombs landed within 500 feet of the aim point. The factories kept producing. The mechanical limitations intersected with human and environmental factors no one had anticipated. Over Europe, the Norden's gyroscopes and gears had to function at 40 below zero, temperatures that could freeze lubricants and contract metal components in ways the Swiss workshop never simulated. Over Japan, a different problem emerged: the jet stream. B-29 crews operating from the Marianas encountered winds aloft that exceeded 200 miles per hour, pushing their aircraft sideways at speeds the Norden's computer could not fully correct. Brigadier General Haywood Hansel, a true believer in precision doctrine, found himself unable to destroy Japanese industrial targets from high altitude because the winds simply scattered the bomb patterns. The technology that was supposed to make precision possible, instead, revealed that precision-required conditions warfare does not provide. The failure of the site forced a doctrinal choice that defined the end of the war. When Hansel was relieved and replaced by Major General Curtis LeMay, the change represented more than a personnel shift. LeMay understood that if you cannot hit the specific factory, you can still burn down the city around it. He abandoned the Norden's promised precision in favor of area incendiary attacks using napalm, a Harvard-developed gel that turned wood and paper Japanese cities into firestorms. The strategy worked in the narrow sense that it destroyed vast areas of urban Japan, but it also represented an admission that the bomber mafia's moral framework, built around the idea of discriminating between military and civilian targets, could not survive contact with the technical realities of 1944. The Norden had not merely failed to hit the pickle barrel, it had failed to make war surgical, and the consequences of that failure were measured in burned cities and civilian casualties. The post-war legacy inverted the wartime experience. In the decades after 1945, the Air Force pursued precision with a vengeance, eventually developing the guidance systems that allow modern munitions to strike within feet of their aim points. Malcolm Gladwell, speaking at a 2011 conference, pointed out that we now live in the world the bomber mafia wanted, a world where a single aircraft can eliminate a specific building without leveling the neighborhood. The irony is that achieving this technical capability required abandoning the Norden's entire approach. Optical sighting from high altitude gave way to radar, inertial navigation, laser guidance, and finally GPS. The Norden, for all its ingenious gearing and gyroscopic stabilization, represented a technological dead end. It was the finest possible expression of a method, visual precision bombing, that the conditions of war had already rendered obsolete by 1943. But the Norden's story endures because it captures something about how militaries think. There is a persistent temptation to believe that a sufficiently advanced technology can remove the friction from warfare, can make destruction discriminate and violence precise. The Norden was the most expensive expression of that belief prior to the nuclear age. Its failure did not extinguish the belief itself. That belief simply migrated to newer systems, newer platforms, newer promises. The men who designed the Norden, who trained on it, who carried it to war under armed guard, were not fools. They were responding to a genuine human desire to limit the savagery of conflict by making its application more deliberate. That they failed is less instructive than the fact that they tried, and that we keep trying still. If you value in-depth historical analysis that looks beyond the familiar narratives, consider subscribing to War Machina and sharing this video.